A single moment of silence can terrify a toxic person more than 1,000 angry words. They expect you to defend yourself. They expect emotional reactions, long explanations, and desperate attempts to prove your innocence. Their influence survives because they know exactly how to pull your attention back to them. Then one day, you stop playing the game. No dramatic goodbye, no argument, no revenge, just silence. That silence forces them to confront something they never expected. They can no longer control you. Marcus Aurelius ruled over one of the largest empires in history, yet he spent much of his reign surrounded by betrayal, political manipulation, and people who smiled in public while plotting in private. Every emperor faced enemies who understood that controlling emotions was often more powerful than controlling armies. Marcus learned a lesson that still unsettles manipulative people today. The strongest response is often the one they cannot predict. Human beings naturally seek emotional feedback. Modern psychology calls this reinforcement. When someone receives attention after certain behaviors, those behaviors become stronger. Toxic people unconsciously rely on this cycle. Every argument, every emotional text message, every attempt to justify yourself becomes proof that they still occupy space inside your mind. That's why they provoke, not because they always hate you, because your reaction gives them certainty. Take that certainty away, and the entire dynamic begins to collapse. A Roman senator once wrote about political rivals who spent years trying to provoke Marcus Aurelius into public anger. They spread rumors, they questioned his decisions, they criticized his leadership. An emotional emperor could have responded with punishment or revenge. Instead, Marcus often answered with calm actions rather than emotional words. His restraint confused his enemies more than any speech could. People who feed on conflict cannot predict someone who refuses to provide it. This brings us to the first silent behavior, the ability to remain emotionally unavailable to manipulation. Notice that this isn't emotional coldness, it's emotional discipline. There's a difference. Coldness is built from resentment. Discipline is built from self-control. A toxic person throws insults, hoping you'll defend your pride. Instead, you examine whether the criticism is true. If it is, you improve. If it isn't, you move on. Epictetus once taught that if someone insults you using something that is true, there is no reason to become angry. If it's false, then you're becoming upset over an illusion. Very few people live this way. That's exactly why it carries so much power. Think about someone who constantly gossips. They expect panic when they spread rumors, but when the target refuses to chase every opinion or defend every accusation, the gossip begins losing its fuel. Without emotional resistance, manipulation has nothing to push against. Psychologists describe this as breaking the reinforcement loop. Behavior that receives no reward gradually weakens. The manipulator starts feeling powerless because the emotional payoff disappears. Ironically, silence speaks louder than confrontation ever could. Seneca understood another side of this struggle. He spent years advising Emperor Nero before Nero descended into paranoia and cruelty. Seneca watched firsthand how insecure people desperately searched for signs that they still controlled those around them. When that control disappeared, fear quickly replaced confidence. Power built on manipulation is incredibly fragile. It depends entirely on someone else's cooperation. The moment you stop cooperating, the illusion begins to crack. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes peaceful. In fact, toxic people often become louder before they become quieter. They test new strategies. They may criticize you more aggressively. They may suddenly become unusually kind. They may even attempt to make you feel guilty. Why? Because they're searching for the old version of you. The version that reacted instantly. The version that explained every decision. The version that believed every emotional trap deserved an answer. But each time you respond with calm instead of chaos, something changes inside you as well. You stop measuring your strength by how effectively you win arguments. You begin measuring it by how little unnecessary conflict controls your peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote something remarkably simple in his private journal. He reminded himself that another person's character belongs to them. His own character belonged only to himself. That distinction changes everything. When you finally understand it, you stop accepting responsibility for emotions that were never yours to carry. And strangely enough, that's the moment toxic people begin to fear losing access to you. Not because you've become more aggressive, because you've become unavailable to manipulation. For someone who survives by controlling emotions, there is nothing more unsettling than meeting a person who has quietly learned to control their own. The second silent behavior is one that almost looks invisible from the outside. You stop explaining yourself. This sounds simple until you realize how much of your life is spent trying to convince other people that you're a good person. You explain your decisions, you justify your boundaries, you defend your intentions. Somewhere along the way, approval quietly becomes more important than peace. Toxic people recognize this weakness almost immediately. They ask questions they already know the answer to. They twist your words. They keep the conversation going, not because they want understanding, but because every explanation gives them another opportunity to create confusion. It's a trap that feels like a conversation. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world where every decision was judged. Senators questioned him. Generals doubted him. Citizens expected perfection. If he had tried to satisfy every opinion, he would have spent his entire reign defending himself instead of leading Rome. Instead, he returned to one simple principle. Your actions will eventually speak louder than your defense. That mindset made him difficult to manipulate. Modern psychology calls this jade. Justify, argue, defend, and explain. Therapists often point out that manipulative personalities try to pull people into this cycle. Because once you're busy defending yourself, they've already shifted the balance of power. The conversation is no longer about truth. It's about keeping you emotionally occupied. Notice how exhausting that feels. You leave the conversation replaying every sentence in your mind. You think of better responses hours later. You wonder if you should send one more message to make yourself understood. Meanwhile, the other person has already achieved what they wanted. Your peace now belongs to them. Seneca observed something remarkably similar in Roman politics. He watched ambitious men spend countless hours trying to repair damaged reputations. Every rumor demanded another explanation. Every accusation required another speech. Yet the more they defended themselves, the weaker they appeared. Eventually, Seneca reached a different conclusion. A calm life cannot exist if every stranger is allowed to become your judge. That's why silence becomes such a powerful answer. Not because you have nothing to say, because you've realized that not every person deserves an explanation. Someone who genuinely cares about you seeks clarity. Someone who seeks control looks for contradictions. Those are two completely different conversations. Here's where toxic people become uncomfortable. They expect access to your emotions. They expect unlimited explanations. When you politely refuse to participate, they lose something they depended on: uncertainty. They begin asking themselves questions they never had to ask before. Why isn't this working anymore? What changed? The truth is, nothing changed overnight. You simply stopped handing over the keys to your emotional world. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive. It means understanding that your character is built through consistent actions, not endless arguments. A tree doesn't explain why it's strong. Its roots do that quietly. The same is true for people. When your values are clear, your life becomes your explanation. That kind of confidence cannot be borrowed. It has to be earned in silence. And once it is, something remarkable happens. Manipulative people stop seeing you as someone they can easily move, because the strongest boundary isn't spoken loudly. It's lived consistently, day after day, until even those who once controlled you realize they no longer can.